Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of Provo City School District's What's Up with the Soup podcast. I'm Superintendent Wendy Dow. In this week's episode, we're highlighting the impressive literacy growth happening at Westridge Elementary. We'll talk with Judy Rose, our elementary teaching and learning director, and Jerrie Reeder, former kindergarten teacher, yes, special place in heaven for her, about how the school's focused use of data and intentional reading instruction are helping students make remarkable progress. We'll also discuss how recent state legislation is influencing reading instruction across the district. And don't forget to watch my weekly video cast. You'll get it right in your inbox, and you can always find it on our district website. It's a quick and easy way to stay up to date on the latest news from across the district. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of What's Up with the Soup. I have Judy Rose, our Director of Elementary Teaching and Learning, and Jerrie Reeder, who is our literacy specialist for elementary. Welcome. Thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you. So this morning, we got to all go to Westridge Elementary, and the Lieutenant Governor Henderson, she was there with Dr. Nye, who is a former superintendent and now works as kind of an education consultant to both the governor and the lieutenant governor. And they wanted to see the science of reading really in practice. So let's talk a little bit about that, because we hear a lot about it, but nobody knows what this is until you've walked into an elementary classroom and you're like, this is amazing what is happening. So describe it for us. Like, how is the reading instruction that we do now different from, say, when we all started teaching?
I've been around a long time. And so I started with whole language, which is let's just teach kids to love to read and they'll just absorb it. And then we went to balanced literacy. That's when I moved to first grade. And I noticed that many of the kids got it, but there were quite a few who didn't. And so I went searching for why. There's got to be more. What can we do for these children? And I ended up going into a special ed class with a teacher who was doing the Wilson program. I don't know if you're familiar.
No, I have no idea.
Oh, it's amazing. It really is.
Okay.
So I got
word.
trained on that. Gay Gibbs, our principal at the time, wanted me to train on it, use it in Tier 2. And I thought it was so powerful that I brought it into my Tier 1. And what it is just like we're doing with 95 right now. It's very strong phonemic awareness and a very strong phonics program, very explicit teaching, systematic, and it worked. And I saw my test scores go up. I saw the kids who were struggling started really making progress. So I'm a big believer. And then later on, now we have the science of reading, which makes me feel like, okay, I feel validated that what I saw worked really does work. And we've had letters where most of our teachers have gone through the science of reading, the letters program, but sometimes that doesn't always transfer into the classroom. I have the knowledge, but what does that look like? And our 95 core is that science in action, which is why I love it.
So that's the curriculum that we're using to teach that. So explain for our listeners, because not everybody will know this, what do you mean when you say phonemic awareness, and how is that different from phonics?
Yes, it's very different. So phonemic awareness is just all oral. It's hearing. You're not seeing any letters. It's actually under the umbrella of phonological awareness.
Okay.
And under that umbrella, there's rhyming, there's breaking apart syllables. And then phonemic awareness, a phoneme is the smallest unit of speech sound. So it'd be like SS, that's a phoneme.
Okay.
And so for children to be able to play with those phonemes, what's the first sound in the word cat? K. What is this word? K-at is the word cat. When they can do that well, when they finally see those letters, they will be able to, k-at cat.
They'll be able to blend it together.
Yes, they can blend it. I've seen kids who go at dog, and that tells me they need more phonemic awareness.
Oh, that's
practice.
interesting. So they can sound out the letters, and then they get the word wrong.
And then they get the word
wrong. That
wrong.
blows my mind.
It does.
But it happens. I've watched it happen before in a first grade class.
Yes, and back in the day, I didn't know what to do with it. And now I do.
Now you know how to fix that.
That's what they were missing.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
And it really helps teachers identify exactly what skills do we need to work on with specific students. When we can dial down to that level of specificity, it really lets us target not only our Tier 1 instruction, but Tier 2 interventions as well.
And Tier 1 instruction is what we're doing with the whole class It's what everybody gets. This is our grade level content skills that we need. So these are reading skills for first grade. We're doing that with everybody. And a tier 2 piece is a student hasn't quite met or mastered that, then we're going to pull them into intervention groups and give them the support that we need so we fill in those holes.
Exactly.
Okay.
And tier 1 is what we observed at Westridge today.
So
that was
good.
so much fun and so good. What I was so struck by in watching those little kiddos working on their words is they weren't just learning how to read a word and read a word. They were learning how to break it apart. They were learning the science of how to read a word. So whether the word was a single syllable, a double, or a triple syllable, they knew how to break it apart. And as those students move into higher levels of reading, they're reading science content or social studies content where the larger vocabulary comes in, they know how to break those words apart and read vocabulary that typically you would think would be far beyond them because they can break those words down. They know how to read, not just how to read a word, the science behind how to read. Even at that young age, those kids that we were seeing today were doing that. It was amazing.
It is
awesome.
amazing. And I just want to add to that we are giving children the tools to figure out unfamiliar words. So it's not just, I have to ask the teacher, what is this? We're teaching them how to figure it out. So that's the decoding part. And then the encoding is I hear it and I write it and I can finger stretch. I know what phonemes, what graphemes, that's the letter, make that match that phoneme and I can write that letter or that digraph or whatever it is and I can learn how to spell. So we are giving our kids lifelong tools in order to figure out print they've never seen or how to spell a word they've never seen.
It was interesting. I was listening to, I think it was a first grader who said, "Oh, that's a digraph." And I was like,
Yeah, that's amazing.
"What's a digraph?" Because I was like, I'm curious. I don't know what that is. He goes, "The word ends in CK. That's a digraph. It's 2 letters that make that same sound." And anyway, and then he went on and gave me all sorts of examples of it. And I was like, I am amazed right now. I have no idea. Like, parents, are you hearing these words? Like, you should ask your kid, give me an example of a digraph, stretch the word. When they were doing the hand gestures for open syllable, I learned about open syllables and closed syllables today. I knew closed syllables. I've gotten that one down, but I didn't know the open syllable. I got the gestures. I got the long vowel sound with the silent E.
Well, and what about putting your hand under your chin?
Okay, talk about that because that was remarkable.
That was amazing. The students were talking about consonants and vowels and how to tell which is which. And one of the teachers put her hand under her chin and said the letter. I think it was the sound ah, ah, ah. And her mouth was opening, her chin was moving, and the students could identify their chin is moving, which makes it a vowel.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And for these students to have that skill and understand that, they can utilize that in words that they've never seen before.
That was a first grader, by the way. That was like, not only explained it's a vowel, knew what that was, knew it was the vowel A and that it made the ass sound, and that they knew it was a vowel because it moved their chin. They just know what the vowels are. I was like, what in the heck? This is amazing to me. And so when they're sounding those out, then when it doesn't move the hand, it doesn't move the chin, then it's a consonant.
Exactly. It's
Blows
amazing.
my mind.
First
I had
grade.
no idea.
First
grade. First graders.
That.
Do I know as much as a first grader? No, I do not. Clearly. And most of us don't, apparently. Tell us what else we saw. They used circles that were colored. So they had blue circles and red circles. And so they were creating these visuals for the kids to understand the consonants and the vowels. And how is that so important for kids? And then they wrote it. So then they would stretch it. They would do the chin thing. Then they were using, it just kept reinforcing it at every level. It wasn't like we're just going through one and then we move on to the next one.
Well, and in different ways. The circles were visual colors. Then the letters were printed and they used the dots to identify how many sounds. And maybe, Jerrie, you can walk us through how that lesson looks. But there were just so many pieces teaching exactly the same thing in multiple ways.
Yeah.
And that's where you see the phonemic awareness and the phonics coming together, because I say a word, dog, then I finger stretch it. How many sounds? Dog. That's all phonemic awareness.
Okay.
And then I move the chips, which there's something called Elkanon boxes. It's the same kind of thing that's been used for years. And you have one phoneme in each box. Could be more than one letter, but it's one phoneme.
Okay, gotcha.
And so they drag it down. So for dog, what color chip is that? It's blue because blue are our consonant sounds. So I bring down a consonant, then I bring down for what color? That's red. It's our short vowel sound, so I bring down a red. So they map that out, and then they are orthographically mapping the word. I'm writing the letters for each sound. So the first sound is D. What letter is that? D. We write the D in the first box.
Right.
The next sound is Ah. What letter spells Ah? O. So I write an O in that. There are so many amazing things going on in that lesson, that part, that is changing the brain. So they are mapping in their brain, mastering that sound connection, the letter to the sound, over and over until it becomes automatic. And then when I do that enough, I see the word dog, it's automatically there for me to retrieve and takes off that cognitive load. It really is amazing, isn't it?
It was pretty incredible. Yeah. And then to watch that you could go from one first grade class to the next first grade class and see that collaboration, right? Because both of the teachers were, in essence, doing the same lesson, right? So we know the kids are getting the same instruction. It's not just based on, well, I have a really experienced teacher here who totally knows how to teach this, and I have a brand new teacher here who doesn't know as much. Nope. Everybody is allowed to have access to the same curriculum.
And even though it's the same curriculum, and you could tell going from teacher to teacher that they were teaching the same curriculum, the same lesson, there was so much teacher professionalism in that lesson. Not every teacher approached it in exactly the same way. Right. We noticed one of the teachers was using, what was it? She put her finger on her chin and extended it out for the long vowel sound. I'd never seen that before. Yeah. And that's teacher experience and teacher professionalism, bringing that into the lesson. And I'm sure it's something that she shares with her PLC team, but not every teacher. One was working on the computer to move the chips. One was moving from the screen to move the chips. One had them go to their desks and they were doing the chips at their desks. Yep. So teacher experience and professionalism, and what is the best way to approach this for my students is where that teacher knowledge really comes in, even with a shared curriculum.
Well, and knowing that sometimes my kids just need to change location. Okay, they're getting restless on the carpet and they can't sit crisscross applesauce anymore. So now we're going to move them to their desk. You know, that's just that with itness that they have.
It is. And when this program was first rolled out, maybe 5 years ago, I was an instructional coach back then. And we went in to model this for teachers because we were given the program, but what does that really look like in action? And we learned a lot. I want to say the first time I taught it was kind of a mess, and I apologize to that teacher. But then we learned so many, like, you have to move back and forth. We need some movement in there. What are we going to do with the books? Where we're going to keep them? When are the kids getting them out? What are some tips and tricks with transitions and
how do we use the chip kit?
Which can be hard. It's a lot to manage. So how do you train the kids so that it's very quick and efficient, which is what you saw today. It was very quick and efficient. Yep. Every kid knew exactly what they were supposed to do. But how do you get to that point? So there's a lot of things to think through. And I think today we saw master teachers using it very well.
And I hope that teachers that are starting with this, there will be, I think, there's a learning curve and maybe a little bit of a level of frustration because there are all of these parts and pieces to figure out, which is where our instructional coaches come in as such a valuable resource. They can get into the classroom and co-plan together and model and co-teach and just really be a think partner with the teacher of how do we approach this in a way that's going to be effective. As a teacher, I'm really struggling with these chip kits. Well, let's see what happens in the classroom together and let's figure this out and figure out how to make it work. The instructional coaches are so valuable in the process of learning how to use a program like this.
And also, so modeling, co-teaching, but also taking them to one of the teachers like today or just a master teacher. Let's watch them do their thing. Mm-hmm. And then I sit side by side and whisper, do you see what they did right there? Do you see how they set a 2-minute timer? You have 2 minutes to get out your chip kits and set them up or whatever. You pick up so much from just watching other teachers.
No, that's very true. It's interesting because I was at a different elementary school, not Westridge, a little while ago, and I was watching a brand new teacher trying to manage some of these things. What you saw was it was just the lack of experience. And then you went into her partner's classroom and she knew exactly the management strategy was there. And I'm like, this teacher is going to pick this up, no problem, because it's going to come from the coach. It's going to come from her peers. Might have been the third week of school. So these are little first graders. So it was just interesting to me that you're exactly right, that you have to figure out those pieces. And that's where the coach comes in. That's where your PLC comes in. What am I doing to support that? And there was just so much that was so good. Just a positive atmosphere, lots of energy, positive energy with the students as well, which I thought was really good. Tell us a little bit about the third grade classroom we went into, because they were doing multisyllabic words. And I thought that was also fascinating. And I learned another new word, which was the schwa, which I had never heard that either. And so I feel like you need to share all of that with our listeners, because that was also a remarkable lesson.
I know that any teacher who teaches these lessons K-3, they are learning so much along with the kids.
Yeah. Okay.
There is so much.
You're just trying to make me feel better, Jerrie, but I really appreciate that.
I'm learning all the time from these programs. Amber was doing some morphology, which is a big part of the 95 core as well, where we are learning Latin and Greek roots and then prefixes and suffixes and what those parts mean. And then you put them together and how I figure out what the word means, because I know what these different parts mean. That's a big part of 95 core as well. And the research shows that really helps build vocab. It really helps students read multisyllable words and figure out unknown words. And then there's the multisyllable words where I think she was doing that with the closed and the open and the different syllable types.
We did decode, and D is apparently an open syllable because, and she had the kids explain it, and they can explain it.
Yes, and
like they know why,
and they're so proud of themselves because they know these things, and they go home and tell their parents, and the parents are like, "Wow,
what are you even talking about?"
Yes.
I had no idea.
I can't think of the 3-syllable word, the last one that they did. It was a big, hard word.
Subscription or something. Or
Something,
encryption or something.
Because
she had the shun on it, and they were talking about that word. Yeah.
And if
they
that
had
was
an action for it.
If that was just on a list of words to memorize, that would be really, really, really tough. But the way they broke it down by syllable using all of these skills, I felt like you could put a 7-syllable word on there, and those kids would be able to break it down and read it.
Right.
It was amazing.
And it also gives them the tool to start figuring out, like, I might not know what this whole word is, but there are parts of this word that I know. And that builds in their vocabulary development as well. I feel like that's what I missed out on, is that I didn't recognize how words were made up. And that stunts your vocabulary development significantly if you're just memorizing a word, right? And so that's a big deal. I think it also helps them in the sense of they're not getting tripped up on how to say the word. And so they learn how to decode it quickly. So as they get into higher levels of classes or science classes or those types of things, that isn't what will trip them up. Now they can be like, no, I know how to say it, but I got to figure out what it means and how this works together. Whereas if I can't even say it, I'm just going to give up, right? I don't know if we see that, but
again, giving them the tools so that they can be independent and figuring out things on their own.
Yeah.
And the goal of the younger grades is that we master the alphabetic code. And we begin with that phonemic awareness, learning letters and sounds and that connection. Then I put the letters and sounds together and I blend the words. I can figure out how to read and write them, and that moves into it just builds. It's very systematic in these programs. And then the kids are doing amazing things.
It was so incredible what we saw. And I also want to talk a little bit about, I don't want to use the word demonize, but we don't appreciate always legislators telling us what we should be doing in our classrooms. But this Senate bill talks a lot about the science of reading as we are figuring stuff out. From before, when we didn't have that, how has this really transformed our ability to teach reading? What have you guys seen in your career?
You know, one thing that I saw when we launched 95 Core a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I think it was pretty well received. It was well launched and well supported, and it was received well, and teachers were doing it, but it came before the learning of the science of reading. So
interesting.
That legislation came, we were a little bit ahead of the curve, I would say, as a district in that. So we were utilizing the science of reading without really knowing we were. We were using 95 Core. And then when our teachers started getting training on the science of reading, what you heard all the time was, oh, that's why. Oh, that's the background. That's why I'm doing this. And they were able to really make those connections of the why. They were seeing that their students were progressing, but now to really understand the science behind it and how the brain works and how that's really connecting to what they're doing, I think was really powerful.
One of the teachers made the comment, like, if you don't understand the science behind it, it just seems very repetitive and scripted. but you understand that everything about it is so intentional. And then you see the results. You're just like, no, this is the way we got to do it. Like, there's no question.
We today have been running a new teacher training session as well. And I was just talking to a first grade teacher there, and she's a new teacher, and she was worried about, I don't know if my kids are getting it. They don't remember that what a consonant is compared to a vowel. I just give it time.
Mm-hmm.
If you are consistent every day teaching this program, it will build and it will stick. And some kids need more exposure, but you just keep using the language, the gestures, and doing the program as it is written every day, and you're going to see amazing results.
Yeah. What it does is it opens up that opportunity then for them to access all of the grade level content that is tied to social studies and applying their reading, right? So now I'm reading and being able to figure out things and answer questions and retell and all of those pieces that go along with it. For people who are trying to figure out, why do we have such a hard time getting our proficiency levels higher? Because I hear that all the time. Like, why is 70% the state's goal? It should be 100%. I'm like, I 100% agree with you. But also, what is it that we need people to understand about this process and how intricate it is and how complex it is? And what are sometimes the barriers that we face as educators in helping kids achieve this?
I think the first thing we need is for every person who doesn't understand the complexity of it needs to come and visit those classrooms that we visited today. The effort and the work that is involved in teaching a child to read is really amazing. And the work that these teachers do is it's just profound and powerful. And I think understanding that first, maybe people come from a background of, well, I just sat down with a book and I read, and
they don't even remember how they learned how to read.
And not every child learns in that way. So there are complexities.
I agree. And the kids don't come to us as a blank slate. They come even at 5. They are coming with 5 years of, I had someone reading to me and talking to me and pointing things out and naming things. So my vocabulary is really large and I'm ready to learn too. I didn't get that rich environment. And so now I have a big gap of where I should be starting in kindergarten. Right. And so we have kids at various levels that we are teaching. Fortunately, the science of reading is the way to go. It does help kids with dyslexia. It's for all students and really moves everyone. It is complex. It's not as simple as I'm in school and I learn. There are so many factors. Attendance is a factor.
Yeah. Classroom support is
Classroom
a factor.
support.
We could list 100 things, I think, that impact that.
So what we're really looking for is where the students are coming in, and then are we helping them to get on that trajectory? I don't want kids making typical growth. I want them to make way above typical growth. Like, I want them to be off the charts. And I think that's the goal of our teachers too, but
I think that's a really good point. If a student is below grade level, in order to get to grade level, they have to make above typical growth. And so I think maybe what would be helpful for people to understand is what we are asking of our teachers is for their students not just to make a year's growth in a year's time, but to make a year and a half, a year and a quarter, 2 years. We are really trying to make up some of these things, and that's a Herculean task. That's not a simple thing for a teacher to do. It's doable, and we're seeing it happen, but it's not simple.
The first grade teachers that we talked to today were talking a little bit about it's easier, obviously, to close those gaps at younger grades, and so how important it is to have smaller class sizes at the kindergarten and first grade level and to make sure that that support is in place. What does that look like? Because it's not only they were talking about a smaller class size so that they can pay more individual attention, but there were other pieces that were important to that as well. Talk a little bit about what you saw in those classrooms that you feel like really made reading accessible to kids that maybe people don't realize are really important.
You could feel the class community was very positive. Starting at the year, the teacher building those relationships with each child is so important. And I know these teachers, and I know that they do that. Mm-hmm. They know all of their students, and the students trust and they feel safe in the classroom. So they're more likely to try things that are hard and persist, and that helps the learning grow. So that's number one, is building those relationships. They also all have very strong management.
Yeah, I
where you
noticed
can
that,
tell they've trained their students, and there's routines in place. And when there's all those routines in place and the kids feel safe, that takes the cognitive load off. Ooh, what's happening next? Or, their brain can focus on what they're learning in that moment. And so it's what they're teaching, but it's everything they've set up in their classroom to help students succeed. Which I think is so important.
It's that structure. So it really becomes automatic.
Yes.
So that I can put all that energy towards the learning.
Yes.
That's amazing. They were just incredible. I was like, I could just sit in here all day. I could learn all sorts of new words and learn closed syllables and open syllables and schwas. And I was pretty excited about that. That was pretty awesome.
The larger your classes, the harder it is to give that one-on-one attention. We noticed in one classroom there was a student that had an earpiece in for translation. And it wasn't just the student was sitting and having things translated for her, and she was a passive learner in that. At one point, the teacher was kneeling in front of that student, and they were looking at the way her mouth was moving and forming the letters and having her repeat the sounds. And that's very intentional, but it's also very one-on-one.
Yeah.
And one of the teachers was mentioning when they do assessments and they're really trying to understand where is each student in their growth and learning, those teachers have to do those assessments with those students one-on-one. It's not a group assessment. It's not something that you can hand off to someone else. For a teacher to really have that knowledge, to be able to form her instruction, she has to be able to do that one-on-one. And the larger your class is, the more difficult that is.
Harder it is. I was over at Franklin Elementary in a first grade classroom, and the teacher would actually have them say the letters in smaller groups, and she would kneel down on the carpet and listen to them. And she was looking at each of their faces and then do the next group and the next group. She was doing it very quickly, but it was good that her class was small because two things. One is you can imagine how the behavior could get off if you had to go through 10 different groups to do 3 at a time or something like that. That's not going to work, right? But just she was so intentional. It wasn't just listening. She was also looking at their mouths. It was fascinating to me. We have speech pathologists now who are first grade teachers. This is amazing. I had no idea.
It is. It really helps the students. We get out little mirrors so they can see their mouth form.
Yep, I've seen that.
Because then they can really, and are hard
they look different
for them to hear the difference in. And if they see their mouth moving a certain way, oh, that's what that is. And so, yes, having a smaller class size so you can really get down with each individual and give that feedback right away.
Yes.
Okay, I see that you're doing this. Look at my mouth. This is what it looks like. And then correct that child in the moment. That's very powerful,
right,
to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think we forget about that piece, is that they have to be corrected right then, because if we don't, then they learn it wrong. And then now we got a whole other thing we got to worry about. So the lieutenant governor asked about, she wanted to hear from teachers about what legislators should know and what policymakers should know. What were some of the things that were shared, or what are some of the things you would share with policymakers, since they're the ones that often legislate these things and legislate money and all of those pieces?
I think one of the things they talked about, we've already mentioned, is class size.
Yeah.
And they talked about having paras, having support in their classroom, and how valuable that is. These teachers specifically, and I think across the board, it's very much encouraged that these teachers work with the students who are struggling, the students who need support. And a para might take the student group that maybe doesn't need as much support. But if you don't have a para in your classroom to help with that, then while you're trying to work with students who might need additional support, you are also working with the whole rest of the class. And so having that, not only a smaller class size, but having support in your classroom, especially at these early grades, I think they were expressing is just so beneficial and necessary.
They had so many good points today. Another one that was brought up is attendance.
Yeah.
In my experience, the kids who show up are the ones who make the greatest growth.
No question.
And I know that our district is doing a lot with just show up and learn. It's magical.
It is so magical. I saw magic today.
Absolutely.
Everywhere.
Yes.
That was so great.
What else we can do to get the kids in school?
Yeah, if we can just need parents to help us get your kid to school, right?
Absolutely.
Like, that's really, really helpful.
So important.
Really important. I think the other thing that I thought was interesting was, I think it gave the the lieutenant governor, I think her going to every single school district and seeing kind of the variations and different things that happen, I think she also recognizes the complexity of what's happening. And I think it's just important for people to understand this isn't easy. It's not like just teach them to read. It's not quite like that. We're not sticking them with a golden book and a little audio thing and say, okay, now you're going to learn.
Right.
I mean, we know some kids could probably learn how to read doing that, but that isn't what we're doing here. And so recognizing that is important.
It's not. And it's not as simple as I prepare a lesson and I show up and I teach it to you and you just absorb it and you should all get it. We know that's not true. Any teacher knows that. Teaching is an art and a science as complex as I come in and I teach, but now I have to make sure every student has learned it. And if they haven't learned it, why? And how do I fix that? And how do I reteach it? It's very complex.
And all of those things are happening in real time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. As the students are sitting in front of you.
Yeah,
It's not like you're like, okay, I'll think about that after you go home. It's like, nope, I'm shifting it right now and I'm figuring this out. So, or they need a brain break or they need, you're just doing it right in that moment. I think about that. We were just in those classrooms for 15 minutes. And then I think about that their day is they're with those kiddos for 7 hours. And I was just like, I got tired. I was like, oh, my goodness, bless their souls, And I think that piece is also really important to understand the energy and the intensity and the patience that it takes to deal with that and the positivity. There's constant mention of great job, and they give them specific feedback about what was good that they did, because that becomes really important so the kid can repeat it.
This is for teachers across all grades, but when I think of lower grade teachers, I think it is exponentially important, that energy level.
Yeah.
They never stop. There's not a time when the students in a first grade classroom are all independent and the teacher is sitting at her desk working on something else.
Oh, yeah, no, that never happens.
It just, in a first grade classroom, a kindergarten classroom, it
No
just
way.
doesn't happen. The pace that they keep is staggering.
Yeah.
And I think having a reasonable class size and having support helps to support them in having that energy. But what those lower grade teachers do is just energy-wise is amazing. Just amazing.
That's incredible. One of the things that I've noticed is as we look at kids that move into secondary schools that are still struggling to read, as a secondary teacher, I didn't know how to help kids learn to read. I could help them with comprehension pieces, but I had no idea what to do if you don't know the sounds, the letter names and sounds, and don't know how to blend words. I had no idea what to do. What is our next step in supporting students if they're moving up into that realm and they haven't picked up on that skill set? Because I was always like, well, I don't know what to do with you. You can't read. So here, let me just give you more. And somehow by osmosis, you'll figure it out. And it's so wrong. It doesn't work, but that's not the teacher's fault. We haven't taught them what to do. So what would be some things that we could take from what we're seeing in the elementary schools and just little by little help our secondary teachers have a better understanding of that to support that reading?
Well, I can be a cautionary tale as well. I was a former sixth grade teacher, and when I had students who couldn't read, I would tell them and I would tell their parents, just read more.
Yeah.
And that's going to improve your reading. And now we know that's not true. But I think
you can't do more of something you don't know how to do.
Exactly. And I think for our upper grade teachers and then moving into the secondary realm, they don't have the background of learning and knowledge that Jerrie has from being a kindergarten and first grade teacher. So I think one of our first steps would be to help those teachers understand, at least in part, the science of reading and the things that Jerrie's been talking about. I don't think as a sixth grade teacher I could have talked about phonemes or phonemic awareness. But it just wasn't part of my vocabulary. And so I think maybe having that foundational knowledge, at least a little bit, would be a good starting place. And then the next piece might be, okay, now what do I do with that information?
Yes, I agree. There's the multi-syllable routine that they can use in the upper grades where you are doing those phonemic awareness and phonics pieces as you break down the syllables. So I'm looking at a multi-syllable word in this first syllable, SUB. Well, that is what you saw today. That is closed.
Yep.
And I can recognize the letters, the graphemes say S, and I can blend it sub. That's the first part of the word, sub.
Right.
And it's just that same kind of what Science of Reading says. We're going to work on building those pathways with that type of practice.
Yeah.
And for an upper grade teacher, that routine seems silly and it seems too young if they don't have a little bit of information about the why. They need to know the science of reading. Otherwise, the silly little routine for my 7th or 8th grade students, that seems like something for a second grader. But if they understand what it's doing to the brain and how it's helping that student learn to read at the level they need them to, then I think it's going to be much more impactful.
And once you know the why, and then you start using it, and then you see the results, that is when you like, I'm a believer.
Yeah, that's
like,
right.
I'm a believer. I should make a little pin that says, I'm a believer in the science of reading.
How about believe in the magic?
Believe in the magic of the science of reading,
Yes.
whatever it is. But yes, once you see it, you're just like, oh, this is magical.
Yeah, no question.
It's science, but it's magical. And yes, it works, but you have to do it and be consistent.
Well, you can make things that seem juvenile or corny still cool to older kids.
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm really good at that as a former high school teacher. Like I could figure out a way to do that. It might take some work, but you can figure it out, especially if kids know the why. This is why we're doing this. This isn't because I'm trying to treat you like you're in first grade. This is because this is actually how we as adults are breaking down this word. We just don't tell you that's what we're doing when we're breaking it down. We keep that a secret so that we can seem like we're like smarter than we are, but we're actually smart because we are doing those things.
And it's making it visible. This isn't a secret.
Yes.
We're going to make it visible what we're doing. So we marry your coolness with the knowledge of the younger teachers.
Yes.
And then you've got it.
You've got it. We can make this happen. So, well, I just want you guys to know how much we appreciate all the work that you're doing to support our teachers, because we have amazing teachers and they're putting in all of this work day in and day out, but it's also because they know they have lifelines in the two of you. And they've been through this and they've gone through coaching cycles and they've been taught how to do it, and they've been able to have safe spaces to problem solve that. And it just really takes a team effort. But I was just ecstatic today. Even Dr. Nye said to me, he goes, oh yeah, 95 Core is doing a really good job. And your teachers, he goes, that is impressive. And I said, that's not the exception. What you're seeing. Like when I go throughout the elementary schools, this is what I'm seeing at every grade level. Like it's not a surprise to me. It's not like I walked in and went, oh, they actually got out the curriculum today. It was like, oh yeah, this is what we do.
There really are amazing things going on everywhere, and shout out to all those teachers because we have so many amazing teachers.
Yeah, they're incredible. Just that energy, keep it up, even though we're going into the holidays.
That's
Here we
right.
go.
Here we go.
Here we go. Well, thank you so much for being at the visit this morning, and just thank you for talking about reading. I'm sorry, I get really excited about it because I clearly don't know a lot about it, and so I feel like I'm learning something new every single day. So it's
we
super fun.
love talking about reading.
We do.
Yes, you do. I could tell. Yes. All right. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of What's Up with the Soup. As always, all episodes will be posted on the district website, YouTube, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Don't forget to join us again next week when we are back with an all-new episode of What's Up with the Soup. Have a great week, everyone.